All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Village Board of Trustees for Cottage Grove. We are holding this as a hybrid meeting, meaning that we are in Village Hall, as well as we have a number of folks who are also on Zoom. The Zoom link is at the top of the agenda. There's also an audio call-in number at the top of the agenda as well for those that choose to call in or connect that way. With that, we have a quorum. The agenda was properly posted, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up, then, we have public appearances. This is public's opportunity to speak. We just ask that if you do like to speak, that you share your name, your address, your municipality, and hold your comments to no more than 3 minutes in case we have a number of folks who would like to speak. And with that, we have two submittals. First, Lorraine Gage at 501 Progress Drive. Lorraine, you look like you're on the Zoom. Would you like to speak at this point?
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Again, my name is Lorraine Gage, and thank you for the opportunity to allow me to speak today. So I think you already gave my address, so I don't need to give that again. But I've been a resident of Cottage Grove for about 4.5 years in the village, and I'm a mom of 3 daughters, 2 adult daughters and a teenager in Monona Grove High School. In addition to that, I serve as a school board president. I've served for the past 3 years, and I've been on the board for about 4 years. In addition to that, I also serve as the resident manager for the affordable homes for moving out. So we have one in Cottage Grove that's called Glen Grove Apartments. So I am not speaking on any of those entities. I'm strictly speaking on behalf of myself. I'm here to advocate for the Cottage Grove Library in our community. So I kind of want to begin with a personal story before I kind of get into my advocacy. Again, I mentioned I'm a single mom of 3 daughters. And I've moved around a lot, and I lived in communities very similar to Cottage Grove. But the one place that was my sanctuary was the library. One, because it was affordable, it was free, and it was a place that my children could socialize, get early literacy, get socialization with other people in the community, and just hands-on experiences with the library programming. It remains to be their sanctuary as adults, just because it was a familiar place to them and a place of comfort. They continue to enjoy the library. So the reason why I'm here is I've witnessed the Friends of the Cottage Grove Library interact with the moving out apartments, Glen Grove Apartments. I actually reached out to them a couple months ago in regards to having programming because the apartments needed some resources and some support, and especially with literacy. And they jumped right in and started programming right away at our apartments, and it has been tremendous. And just kind of the things that I mentioned for my personal reasons, it's really helping the apartment as well. So I definitely see the socialization. Another piece that's really important, especially to new residents to Cottage Grove, is the community integration piece. It has really been effective where they now feel like they're a part of the community. Just kind of that literacy is really so important for them. And I just feel that our community is growing diversity-wise and size, and it's important that we have a library in our community that can provide those same experiences that I talked about, and then also that the apartments are enjoying. I think it's beneficial to all residents. And I think now is the time to revisit this and think about having a library that everyone can utilize, from young to old, regardless of race or nationality. I think it's time. So we just want to hit home again that this is so essential to provide community integration, to provide the education that's needed early on, and have those experiences that I mentioned for all of our children. So I'm going to end with that, and I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I hope that you strongly consider having a library in our community. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lorraine. Next, we have a form submitted from Stephen Way. Just doesn't wish to speak, just wants to make sure that we thank all those who were in the planning and volunteering after the library program events. The library board certainly appreciates all that has been involved, as well as in the village staff. So Stephen wanted to communicate that. Stephen, I think you're here too, so.
Thank you.
Yep. And he's at 100 Coyle Parkway. He's in the village. So, anyone else in the room or on Zoom who would like to speak? All right, then we'll move then down to presentation from board. And I'm sorry, we'll move right to, skip the line. We'll move to discuss and consider a regular board meeting held on July 17th. The meetings are in our packet. Any questions, comments, edits, or consideration for motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from July 17th.
Second.
Motion by Sarah, seconded by David. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Now we'll move to the presentation to the board. Information regarding community night out to be held on August 17th.
I'll defer to Lieutenant Wagner. This is his project.
We'll come sit up front, sorry about that.
Make sure you push the button so everybody on Zoom can hear you too.
I don't need a microphone.
Yeah, but the folks on the computer will need.
Go ahead, Trista. No, we want to thank everyone for allowing us to speak here tonight. So this has been a year coming. As Trista calls it, the brainchild of me. I do have a good idea every now and again. So we attended National Night Out last year with the Dane County Sheriff's Department that was held up at Glacial Drumlin. And myself and Officer Jess and Trista, after that event said, you know what, this is something that we can do. So we decided at that point that we were going to then make it our own and make it more community-based, not following the National Night Out, but more of a community night out where we can bring the residents of our fine community together with all of our entities from the village, from Parks and Rec to Fire, Deer Grove EMS, ourselves, and Cottage Grove Chamber of Commerce, and just kind of showcase Cottage Grove in one great evening. So as we sat down over a year ago and started planning this meeting, we started getting more and more involved. So on August 17th, starting at 4 p.m., we'll have our first annual community night out. We will have food trucks to help feed the community. You do have to pay, it's not on my dime, but this will be held at Bakken Park. So we're hoping to showcase Bakken Park, the new Wheels Park will be open by then. Miracle Field will be there, so we're really trying to showcase one of the phenomenal parks that we have. Throughout the event, we'll have music in the Grove. We'll also be playing, so we're kind of tying everything that we do throughout the summer into one big evening. So we already have the band prepared and ready to go. Through that, we will also end with a movie. An outdoor movie played on an outdoor screen, so we're hoping everyone brings their blankets and their chairs, cushions, couches, sofas, whatever you so choose. The rugby, Wisconsin Rugby has been a phenomenal partner in this and allowing us to utilize one of their fields to be able to hold the outdoor movie. So we'll hopefully end the evening with some free popcorn and a great movie. We will not disclose what the movie is yet. We're holding that off for our social media posts, so we please do ask everyone to like, share, and love our social media posts so we can get this out to as many people as possible.
And we just wanted to thank the Cottage Grove Community Foundation. We wrote a grant in support for the event, and it's happening because of their support. And we're hoping to make it, like we said, an annual event in the future with all of our departments.
All right. Any questions from the board?
What are the times? I know it's August 17th, but.
So we're listing a starting time of 4 p.m.
Okay.
So there'll be, it's kind of an incorporated marketplace days as well. So we're gonna have vendor booths along the walkways and Bakken, so they can be set up at 4 p.m. through the 7:15 start time of the movie. Music in the Grove time is slotted a little earlier, so that'll be 5:30 to 7 o'clock.
Wonderful. Looking forward to it.
Thanks for putting this together.
Thank you.
All right. Next, then we had unfinished business. This is discuss our 2023-2024 prioritization of non-capital related initiatives. Matt sent out a grid summary to the board, and it was also in the packet. I think there was an updated one this afternoon for everyone. So Matt, I don't know if you want to tee this up.
There was an update a little bit ago, and then actually 5 minutes ago, another update. And as I looked at it, another real small, in my opinion, small. That one should be an M, not an H there. That one shifted down to 2.4 as an aggregate average score. So, but it is colored correctly as far as consistency goes with how I was tracking these. Green being high, yellow being medium, and red or pinkish being low. So yeah, there are 23 total items, and 7 of those came out high, and then 8 through 22 medium, and then 2 tied for 23 as low. So
Any questions, comments from board members?
I would just say this is an interesting way to look at it this year. I think everyone put together a lot of great priorities, and I had a really hard time ranking them, especially because I think some are related or could be portions of others, like sustainability and how that relates to so many different departments. And then investing in our infrastructure, goes into fiscal responsibility because, a little bit of maintenance on a road now prevents a lot of costs later, or, can help fuel economic development and connect our community with bike paths to local businesses. So many of these things are interrelated, and I think the variety of topics raised by board members really shows how we're really looking at the big picture as a board, and how we can, grow our community and make sure it's a great place to live and work and start a business. So I had a hard time doing this, and I think we have a lot of great priorities here, but there are the high-ranking ones, and I think it gives us some direction going into budget season. But it was hard to do.
Thank you, Heidi. Anyone else?
Matt, can you kind of talk through, and I think I ask this question every year, so apologies, but just for the record, can you talk about how staff, now that this is done, or assuming it's done, how does staff kind of move forward, and how do you guys look at this, and how does it kind of steer the rest of your year for you?
I think department heads would use these during in developing performance goals and objectives for staff as they get into the next cycle for evaluations. As there's budget requests made, I think it's beneficial for departments to make reference to how the request may reflect to these priorities. And then when it comes to Cameron and I developing a recommended budget, all things being equal, we'd probably use this as kind of, some direction as far as, where to cut, where to add to, if some things are kind of use this maybe as a tiebreaker. But it's just general direction, and at the end of the day, it's still just used, and ultimately, the board making final decisions on policy and, and then Cameron will speak later to the capital process that's being kicked off as well, which will lead into the financial management plan, but.
Yeah, and kind of as Matt mentioned, and Heidi and I previously discussed at the Public Works Committee, I view this as where I see like sustainability tied for eighth, and we've kind of discussed, while we're doing things, trying to look for sustainable options when we're pricing out vehicles for the next year. Well, what are the options? But then I also then look at fiscal responsibility being tied for third, and that kind of plays a factor into at what price point do we break even saying, okay, we're willing to pay a little bit more for something that is more, environmental friendly and such. And I encourage everyone throughout the budget process to have conversations often with me. I'm more than glad to see any of you guys just stop in for a quick 10, 15 minutes to a Zoom. As I kind of mentioned in previous emails, there is a finite amount of increase that we have available to our levy. In the email I had sent that equals to about 3%. So it is very difficult to add things, but it not necessarily difficult to shuffle things around. So that's where this kind of process helps guide those decisions.
Any other comments, questions? All right. Thanks, everybody, for doing a little homework, and I'm glad it was hard for some, because it was hard for me too, because it's a lot of good stuff on that list. With that, then, we will move to new business, and this is, exciting, discuss and consider canceling our September 4th Village Board meeting. Hit another holiday again.
I'll make a motion to cancel the September 4th Village Board meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then? Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. All right, then we slide right down to reports from village boards, commissions, and committees. First up is the library board. David.
Sure. We met as a library board on Thursday, July 20th. We do have a discuss and consider today on this one, but I think I'll read through my notes and then we can double back to the discuss and consider. So, library board plans on submitting an operational budget for continued programming and a small capital budget at the August meeting. Additionally, the library board requested that a full library FGM capital cost go through the budget review / capital prioritization process. The library board did approve Cindy's request for additional staff hours to support the library board through the remainder of the year, noting that the need for staff hours will continue to decline over time. We did have a pretty lengthy conversation around it ramps up and it comes down, and we think it'll continue to decline, but we might need a little bit more help here as we go. There should be a memo in the packet, I believe, and that memo suggests a few ways to streamline and reduce admin burden. We also approved and signed a memo, I actually signed it today, thank you, JJ, a memo that highlights the goals and objectives of the library board moving forward given the financial realities. Then we talked about some of the events. So to date, there have been over 1,500 attendees at 27 events. That was through mid-July. There's been a few more since. Highlights include 80 to 100 people attending Critter story times and the wonders of physics. We currently have between 7 to 10 programs planned per month this fall. Bigger events include the bike rodeo on September 9th and an all-community read with author Maggie Ginsburg on October 26th. We're expanding our story time with McFarland Youth Services Librarian, and that's going to take place every Friday this fall. The first Friday will be in the Moving Out programming space. We've been doing a lot of work with Moving Out, which is really cool. The final AARP grant report is linked in the agenda. It contains photos of the 2 free little libraries and a presentation to Drummond that were those the free little libraries were built by MG21. Because there have been requests from the community, the library board is considering a programming and DEI work group, and we'll discuss it at the next meeting. And the next meeting is on August 16th. So going back to the request for additional staff hours, there is the memo in the packet. As approved in, a couple highlights, right? As approved in the fiscal year 2023 budget, the library board was allotted 5 hours per week of administrative support. To date, libraries have ranged from 2.72 to 32.75 with an average of 10 hours per week. We did discuss that. We're suggesting, or suggested a request to maintain the 10 hours a week of support for the remainder of 23. You guys can all read the memo. I won't read it for you. So that was just a highlight I wanted to point out. So any thoughts, questions, concerns?
So, so the ask came from me as far as what we can do to try to reduce the number of staff hours for the remainder of the second half of the year. The library board was allocated 5 hours of staff time. We've exceeded that almost every single week, in multiples, unfortunately. We've also exceeded the total amount, not even halfway through the year. So what I was anticipating was actually a reduction, not an increase from 5 hours per week. And so I'm a little bit puzzled at that. I certainly understand there's a lot of activity going on, but I mean, are there ideas that the library board has in how to actually get after this? For, we only have a $30,000 budget for programming, and I'm just scratching my head trying to figure this out, because we're wearing staff out because they have a full boat, as everybody knows, on their plate. So do we need subcommittees on the library board to have discussions? Do we need to meet every month for the library? All kinds of things I'm just throwing out from my vantage point to try to reduce the number of hours. Because it's an official board, staff have to be involved in that, posting agendas, et cetera, so minutes, et cetera. So this all has to be done as an entity of the village. But what I'm trying to figure out is how do we reduce the support needed going forward, at least for the remainder of the year, because as this board approved, 5 hours per week was the approval, and we've gone past that.
To echo off of John's, the library programming also came back mid-year to ask for a budget increase. So I don't have a lot of faith in the library board. Constantly coming back, asking for more financing and hours from staff. Like, we have hours that we need to budget across services and things. Any other business, I'm sure there would have probably been people firing and dealt with repercussions, like going over your hours, going over your allotted budget. I'm in support of the library. Like, I love library program, I love the benefits of it, but I need to know that the people responsible for putting it on are following what all, like Parks and Rec, every other service needs to follow as well. So seeing this memo is pretty hard because they've already gone over their allotted hours for the year already.
I think part of that, especially the 32 and 3/4 a week, I mean, there's been an awful lot of learning as we go, and a lot of staff time, because staff doesn't know, I mean, the staff are learning as well, right? So things that take maybe an hour now probably took 5 to 10 hours earlier in the year.
And is Tracy supposed to be reporting to the library board or Parks and Rec? I believe at a meeting we had determined that Tracy was to run library programming through Parks and Rec, where systems and processes were already set up for this. So correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't, we have to go back and look at the minutes. I don't recall
Yeah.
that being
I thought
specific.
it was
JJ, you'd have
discussed
to,
at an earlier meeting,
have
but
to help me here, JJ, on that one. I don't recall that being the case.
I believe it, budget time last year, it was gonna go through Parks and Rec, but then the hiring of Tracy kind of came after the fact.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure if that was spelled out with Tracy's role. But I believe it was, she works for the library board.
And I mean,
Reports
a
to the
lot,
library
some of
board.
this time too is like when Tracy needs to go order something, either Sean or JJ has to approve it, and that counts towards the hours, right? And that takes time, right? And so I'm kind of caught in the middle here because it's like, I mean, Tracy's an employee, I don't understand why she can't just buy her own things and she reports to the library board.
So I can kind of follow up to that. You know, working with JJ, we've really talked about what are ways that we can do to reduce the administration time. As part of that, Tracy does have the authority to purchase her own things now. She's set up on our Amazon account. She just needs to get preliminary approval from Cindy because there just has to be something in place. So we put that in place about a month ago.
3 or 4 weeks ago. Yeah.
Which was a good change, in my opinion. I think where some of the inefficiencies in time is, you know, you get an email or two a day, and or several, and you have to address each of those emails individually. I think we see a lot of benefit on potentially either designating one day every 2 weeks or one day a week with a 2 or 3 hour increment, saying, okay, this is library time, hold your questions, they will get answered during this time frame. I think that puts a lot of control back on the total hours being spent. So if JJ has, you know, 2.5 hours one week from, you know, 8 to 10:30, and then 2.5 hours the next day, or whatever the board approves, I do think that helps, I think, set boundaries, because then JJ has time in the rest of his schedule to address his other responsibilities. So that would be my recommendation, setting some hourly boundaries as well. I don't know, JJ, what are your thoughts are? Or?
That just I mean, we talked a little bit about how that just gives me a little pause if something that's stacked up in that to-do list doesn't get taken care of in the 2.5 hours, then it's a formal board that has things that have to be done. I mean, I can't not post the agenda properly if I hit some hour mark, so it would take some work at least, but.
I mean, I know that in Cindy's memo, she's talked about agenda creation, and she's willing to take that on. I'm just, I feel like I'm caught in the middle here.
Yeah, some of that stuff she can't take on though, because of, again, as I said at the outset, it's a formal board. It's there's statutes and everything else that are stacked up in this as far as things that have to be done and documented, et cetera. That's why I brought up, do you need to meet that often? Do you need subcommittees that are meeting? I mean, this is all stuff that just churns through hours that most of the board's already on those subcommittees. So I don't know, I'm trying to figure that out a little bit. Cameron, do we have the total hours so far?
Yeah, so I have hours through July 22nd. We're at 368.75 hours. And again, I think when we discussed that was 260 hours for the year, and the request is 10 hours extra a week. So that ends up being 20 hours per pay period. Another kind of way I look at this is, if you have the person in charge of the programming is only spending 20 hours per week, the ratio, the 1-to-1 ratio on admin overhead is really high. And that's, I think, where we need to make sure we're spending our dollars, because the aggregate, you know, I had been asked to do kind of a calculation, and the admin time when you factor in the composite rate of staff is about $27,930. That's as much as the library board was given for the year, and just in staff time. And again, it's not that any staff are against the library by any means. There's just, JJ has other responsibilities. You know, I have other responsibilities, and balancing those responsibilities and what's supposed to take priority is where we kind of get stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
I have kind of a, oh, sorry, go ahead, Vince.
No, I just had a question about the purpose of the library board. What we're looking, given the financial realities that we're facing is a library board necessary to govern a $30,000 program? Should it really be with the Parks and Recs department?
Yeah, we still need a library board.
Why?
Can we talk about that?
I mean, we still put it on the priority list that we're driving library programming. We're still talking about driving, at some point, building a library, be it 10 to 15 years.
So should we be putting this many hours into something that's 10 to 15 years down the road?
We're still driving, I mean, the goals we just signed are all driven towards library programming. That's the overwhelming mission of the library board, is to help drive library programming.
But isn't that just one person?
But, right. Go ahead, Vin, sorry.
No, I'm just curious, isn't that just one person, part-time?
I mean, I wanna be careful here, cause that's not on the agenda to talk about.
No, we're talking about how to be more efficient, I think is what we're talking about. So, I mean,
Sounds like 5 hours is, well, I mean, is there a number of hours that we're comfortable with? It was budgeted for 5.
it was budgeted 5, go ahead, Matt.
Just one comment. I just want to make it totally clear. Staff will do as many hours as necessary, but we want to add value, and I think where the value added is with the programming. And, I mean, there's no other committee, commissioner, board that is supervising a, $15,000 to $30,000 program, and it's more efficient to run it through systems we already have, so you don't have to schedule, public meetings. I mean, technically, Tracy can't, she needs direction, formal direction, you have to schedule a meeting, and then that's her time too. So it just comes down to efficiency.
Yeah, and how do we deliver this value add programming to the community as efficiently as possible? And that's where I was looking back to the library board for some suggestions. Because as it stands right now, it's not efficient, and it's like a runaway train.
I'm happy to go back to the library board and have a conversation about how to trim it down.
To John's earlier point about the subcommittees, I wonder if those could be pared down right now while we don't have a building, right?
We've pared the subcommittees down, yeah.
Okay, because a couple of days ago, I don't know when, I think I got like 6 texts in a row. Possible quorum, library board, subcommittee 2. Possible quorum, library board, subcommittee. Because there was a library event coming up, and I knew this was on the agenda. I thought, wow, that's a lot of having to notice possible quorums for all these different subcommittees. I wonder, is there a way to?
Yeah, I mean, we drastically cut things down quite a bit. I mean, again, our goals are driven towards library programming.
Yeah, but they
moving
still
forward.
exist, right? The subcommittees technically still exist.
JJ, I don't know if we technically disbanded or they're not meeting, as far as I know.
Yeah, they still exist.
And so
yes.
that's why we have to notice the possible quorum of them all.
Well, the possible quorums are,
Those-
and
and those
Lisa,
are for-
correct me if I'm wrong,
For
those,
programming, right?
Yep,
So like
for
if the library
programming.
board members wanna go, that's
Right,
that's
right.
the quorum. They're not subcommittees.
But I think we're getting notices on the possible quorum of the subcommittees, right?
No,
What
of
am I
the
getting?
programming.
Program.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
'Cause
but
a lot of the
we're
library
getting,
board members wanna go to the
Of
programming.
course, yes.
right,
yes,
but they
yes,
have to do
yes.
the notice because the subcommittees are still a thing.
As far as I know, the notices you're getting are for the programming, not for subcommittees. I'd have to look at my email though.
Larry?
they're for a possible quorum of the library board, not the subcommittees typically, and, like, yeah,
Okay.
because most of those are one and the same with
So-
members.
So a couple of things, the small to big, small, a resolution of the library board, disbanding, terminating the work of subcommittees would be helpful for these and other reasons, just so that you know what bodies exist.
Sure.
And what don't. With respect to, again, small things, notices, possible quorums, it's not a violation of the open meetings law for a quorum of anybody to end up in the same place. What they're not allowed to do is talk about the business of their entity in that setting, which is hard when you're talking about programming. I mean, you can go to the program, but you can't talk about, well, what are we gonna do next? What, not there. So, what I always tell clients is that a little bit of discipline and understanding and what you can and can't do when you're not in a notice meeting can save some. You don't have to put a possible quorum notice into everything, right? I mean, community night out, you don't have to do a notice. That just make sure when you're there, all of you aren't talking about, business of the board. So there's ways to pare that back if it becomes overwhelming. To the bigger question, as I've listened to this and thought about it, I think that the library board is an autonomous entity, right? But I think it is helpful to receive direction as to what the expectations of the village board are for the library board. There are functions that the library board, as long as it exists, will continue to address. I think drawing lines between what, if there's a lot of meetings because there's a lot of programming discussion, I think that can be handled in different ways. If there's meetings about the future and fundraising and, those can be a little less frequent, right? Because as everyone's sort of realizing, we're talking about, for facilities, for instance, and I know you're, going to be doing less and less of that. But I think it's important to draw lines to give direction as to what's expected, even though the library board is a bit more autonomous than other boards and councils and committees. But for instance, what we were talking about with Parks and Rec is figuring out how to create a standard sort of process for identifying opportunities for library programming, assessing those opportunities, and then realizing whatever ones are chosen. Having that done by the library board is probably the most inefficient way to do it, but they're also the people who have the most interest in input in, or maybe not the most, but certainly a significant amount of interest and input in doing that. If they're not a public body, that option was thrown out there, then they don't have public meetings and they don't, if you want to, there's a lot of ways to do it, but we all have to understand that whatever the role of the library board is, they're going to have to perform that role in public settings with public meetings, which create staff time, resources, or use of resources. So the programming versus the sort of bigger picture library issues for the community could be separated. I think that there would be a desire on behalf of the library board to maintain a role in, that process of putting programming on, because everyone's excited about it and it's the main thrust of what the library board is doing now. But that can be done in ways where it's maybe not quite as direct, but still as functional and as valuable. When I remember the conversation about this running through Trista's team at Parks and Rec, that was the original conversation about staffing, right? So it was, what are we going to create for staffing to do this? And the idea was, we've got a sort of a stood up already functional system that we can process this kind of thing through. So considering that, more formally putting that arm of what the library board's doing now into that role, leaving the library board to do some of the bigger picture and still contributing to the programming in the ways that they have been, I think it's a smart way to at least assess whether there's efficiencies that can be found.
Thank you, Larry.
I think that there were a lot of good points there, so I'm trying to digest them and think about the comments that I kind of jotted down in our discussion. And remembering back to budget season last year, I do remember talking about this being run out of Parks and Rec to be the most efficient because we already have that system set up to implement programs. And I think it's clear that there's a little bit of a trust issue between the library board and the village board, and perhaps vice versa, just coming back for more funds and coming back for more hours and not being clear about what our financial, the library board didn't feel we were clear about our financial picture in the future. So I think we're starting to clarify that and, having a facility so far down the road and looking at our financial realities for staffing, I think it still makes the most sense to run programming through Parks and Rec and streamline that through a department that already kind of specializes in that community enrichment type programming. And then that leaves our administrative staff to, get back to their more specific jobs that are kind of higher level rather than, an area they're not necessarily specialized in doing. So I'd be interested to hear from the library board on those efficiencies that we can gain in that. And not to say that the library board can't have a role in what the programming looks like, but I think looking at how our finances will look in the next 5 years at, minimum, I think we really need to figure out a better way to run this, and then we can dedicate more of Tracy's time to programming. And
Let me, just to clarify, right? So like, when we met with Sean and Trista, there was and Sean, correct me at any point here, but there was I don't want to say reluctance, because again, like Matt and all staff have always been like, you tell us what you want, we'll do it, right? But there was still kind of like wow, our plate's pretty full already, what can we do? And that's what led us to hiring Tracy. So to say that we should run it through Parks and Rec, I think they have a lot on their plate already, right? And so I think that I want to be super clear here. The staff are learning along with Tracy and Cindy. So it's like, again, what should have only take 15 minutes could at points take multiple hours or days at a time, right? So to say that this is all because of Tracy and Cindy, I don't think that's fair, right? I think there's plenty of blame to go around, and again, we've never done this before, right? So Brittany, to your point, right? Like we don't know what we're doing, right? And so that's led to an exorbitant amount of hours being used. How we didn't even know that the library had to pay for attorneys' time. We just thought like we didn't know Parks and Rec and Public Works, when they have to call the lawyers, they have to pay for that too. I didn't know that. I think Sarah, I asked you, like, we all don't necessarily know the inner workings of the day-to-day of how this place works, right? Nor should we, right? But I mean, it's like, sometimes I ask, like, how did we get here, right? And it's like, on top of it, like, Tracy was supposed to be a contractor, and now she's a full-time staff person, right? So I think we all just need to give ourselves just a little bit more grace, and I think what I should do is go back to the library board and let's make this an open dialogue, right? I don't think we have to say like, hey, we don't, to Vince's point, right? I mean, I think it's a fair question, but at the same point, like the people that are most interested and most vested in the library, right, are on the library board, right? So I think we just take a beat. I'll go back to the library board at the next meeting and we'll talk about it. We don't have a September meeting, so that's gonna help on the agenda time. So I mean, we've got a lot of good programming coming. We're doing a lot of really good things. I think things are gonna slow down quite a bit in terms of use of admin time, so let us kind of go back to the drawing board and we'll figure it out, and we'll come back and hopefully we'll be at or under 5 hours a week.
David, just a clarification, Sean, jump in on the Parks and Rec stuff, but that discussion happened before having Tracy, so the lack of time was Sean and Trista don't have time to create the programming, but now that there's a person, they can very easily and efficiently manage and coordinate with Tracy as needed, I would assume.
Yes, absolutely. We were just a little fearful of the fact that we're not librarians and making sure that the programming was out there, but absolutely.
And I just want to just quick go back for a second. I think that this is the first year that we did this, and there was a lot to figure out, and yeah, dropping it on Parks and Rec, like, come up with everything we want to do. But now that we have, like Matt pointed out, have Tracy, we kind of know what we need to do. We're kind of done with the FGM study, and we know our financial picture. So how do we streamline this program to get the most value for the community as possible, without utilizing a lot of extra time? So I just want to, I'm not passing blame anywhere. We were all in a learning situation this year and figuring out a lot of things. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
David, maybe something to take back or to consider would be Trista and Tracy kind of partnering on that and reporting back to the, reporting quarterly updates or something to the library board and getting feedback. I can't imagine they would, almost anything that the library board would want them to work on that they wouldn't, want to take that on, but that's just something to think about.
Yeah. Stefan, I know you're here. Do you have any thoughts about any of this?
Yeah, if I can.
Sure.
Just a couple things. One, I'm sorry you're disappointed in us. We do our best. We're volunteers. We don't know how village government works, and we've learned a lot. So we do appreciate the grace in those elements. I'm very, very sincere in my comments this time and last time that we really appreciate the village staff's help and how much they've invested their time in us to learn and build. I don't think we had a memorandum of understanding, and I don't think we did a great job to admit of really tracking what hours were occurring over the last year. So I don't think it's fair to blame any one person on that, but I appreciate the grace with that. Regarding understanding the financial situation, if you were at our last 2 meetings, we did carry forward the message of why we can't build a physical library. We are championing that idea. We're not bringing a false hope of, hey, we can get this done regardless. So we are being very, very mindful of that, especially myself. I think I've been on the record, others have been on the record, as no, we don't want to raise people's taxes. No, we don't want to be a burden on the village, but we want to provide services along with them. I think we've come a long ways with JJ's work, Cameron's work, and Matt's work to do a better job with budgeting, and a lot of hours went into that. And that we're doing, I think, very, very well finding opportunities to cut that back. So to your point, John, yeah, I think if we're held to that 5 hours, we'll figure it out, we'll make it work. I know we've asked for more money than what you expected, but that is just something we can carry forward and ask and then negotiate from there. So any questions for me as a representative of the library? Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to clarify my comment, Stefan, just a quick second. I'm not disappointed with any one member, maybe just disappointed in the handling of everything. I appreciate all of the library board's members' passion for this, because I hands down would vote for library if it was fiscally responsible. Library program, I voted for it, hands down. I'm just disappointed that maybe there's not clear communication, and I feel like we're just beating a dead horse with all of these meetings because we know it can't happen. And we're wasting staff time when we can use this money and these hours to better the programming and serve the community, which it's for. So, thank you.
Well, I don't think we need a motion, but I'll table that and we'll come back to the next one.
Yeah. Thank you, David.
Yep.
I appreciate the open and candid conversation. And again, it's not due to talking about something that's not valuable to the community. It is, and there's a lot of passion on all sides, which is what we need. I just want to be as efficient as possible to get this so we can continue it into the years to come. And that's really what I was trying to get at. All right. Next, then we have Parks. Heidi.
Right, thank you. So we met on Thursday, July 27th, and we had some conversations with some neighbors of the skate park when we were talking about the skate park opening, about signage or noise, making sure, you know, kids know all the expectations for utilizing the park and how we can all be great neighbors to keep the park a great place to use. So we talked about that, and as you all know, the skate park is moving along. There's landscaping, and the grand opening will be ribbon cutting the 19th, 10 a.m. So hope to see all of you there. It'll be an exciting day for us to open a new amenity. So always a fun time to do something like that. So I think, anything else on the grand opening, Sean, you want to mention?
No, I don't
Okay.
think so.
All right, sounds good. We also went over some concept plans for the Shady Grove Park. As you can tell, there's a lot of houses going in. There's the parkland. Hasn't been turned over to the village yet, but we want to be able to kind of have something going, so as soon as possible, we can install, and I believe that's scheduled to use Park Development Fund, so as we think about capital budgeting, we do have Park Development Fund to utilize for that. So the committee's keeping that in mind. You heard about Community Night Out, so we talked about how the therapy dogs will be there in the park. Other project updates, concrete will be coming soon for the parking lot and tennis courts and pickleball at Bakken. Perhaps next week. We were talking 2 weeks from then, so yeah, next week. So you can have fun driving by that to see the progress there. The community guide is hopefully going to be done for Community Night Out as well.
Will be.
Okay, perfect. Then we do have a discuss and consider about the ball diamond maintenance machine, which we had in our capital plans, but there was a cancellation on one, so we have the opportunity to get that faster and less cost than previously estimated. Is that right, Sean?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep, as Heidi mentioned, we had it budgeted for '24. With the equipment nowadays, you're kind of signing a contract well in advance because you can't really get anything. So we received a not-to-exceed number. One became available, and we could purchase it. Actually, this year, we would have to use park development money. If the board chooses to not, we're still in line to get one for next year. So that doesn't change. It gives us a chance to save about $5,000 on a piece of equipment.
So that's our discuss and consider for the evening from the committee. And they did recommend that purchase to the board, so.
Quick
So-
question on that. Would the money, so let's say we bought it this year, got the $5,000 difference, would we be able to pay back the park fund
So-
next year with the money we were gonna use?
So this is where we kind of, in a lot of our capital, we're gonna struggle with equipment and the deferral. So if that piece of equipment ends up in the equipment plan, then that fund would get paid back the dollar amount. We wouldn't be paying the 51,000 for it. We'd be paying, I think it was 43-ish. So then the 43,000 would get, the capital fund would reimburse the parks fund. What's really nice about that fund is it's like a temporary kind of bank account for that fund, which allows Sean to have some flexibility and again, save some money here. So I recommend this purchase as well.
Sean, what, so a brand new one is 50K in 2024. Why is this one $5,000 less?
That brand new one of 50K is a not to exceed number. So just because we're not going to exceed that, we can get it cheaper. They give us the bottom line. If this gets pushed out and prices change, obviously, then they give you a not to exceed number. So even if it's higher than that, we're still only paying the 50K.
Okay. Makes sense. I will make a motion to approve purchasing a diamond maintenance machine with a not to exceed of $50,000.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second then. Any further discussion? Sean, we actually get it this year too?
Yep.
That's shocking.
Yep, we should have it in the next month and a half.
with all the other pieces of equipment that we've discussed as a board, that is just,
Somebody
Shocking.
ordered it well before we did and then backed out at the last minute, so
Alright.
good for us.
all right, any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Anything else? Heidi?
I did just see one other note. The AEDs are installed, and there were some interviews and stories on 27 and 15. So thanks to our staff and EMS staff for making that happen. It's an exciting story for our community. So fun to see it on the news, and Miracle League and all sorts of cool stuff for Cottage Grove in the news. So our next Parks and Rec meeting will be August 24th.
So quickly on the AUDs, like Chief's here, so I'd like to thank him for his involvement in supporting parks on that, as well as I believe this is a pilot for the county, which is really cool. That Cottage Grove gets an opportunity to do that too, so I think that's a special thing. They're still trying to sort out the stuff at 911 to get the codes and everything passed along according to what Chief told me, but it's pretty exciting for Cottage Grove to be at the forefront of this. So the county's been involved as well.
We've had some, was it Prairie du Sac, Matt, that reached out, Village, and just asking, how we did it, so hoping to get plenty of those calls that everybody does it.
Share the wealth. All right, and then we move to Public Works. Heidi, you're still on.
Yep, my meetings all happen in clumps, I guess. So we met on Tuesday, August 1st, and we talked with the residents of Forest Ridge again, Forest and Drive, Arbory Court. There's a village-owned property behind houses there, and they had been maintaining it just as an extension of their yard for a number of years. So we're working to define that relationship, maintenance, any property that's on it. So it's been across quite a few meetings that we've been discussing this. We still don't have quite a final decision on it, but we hope to come to one at our next meeting, which will be on September 5th. So we'll continue on that discussion. The solar panels are still waiting for a piece, so hopefully that'll happen in August. I believe that's the schedule. We discussed a light at the Glacial Drumlin Trailhead, working with the state on lighting the parking lot there. So they'll put forth some money to pay for the light, and then we have the electric bill. So we have some quotes. We're working on that. Perhaps getting something solar powered is an option we're considering. We have some air quality issues at the old Public Works building on Bonnie Road. There's some ceiling tiles missing, so it's out of fire code, but we can't have staff working in the building because of the mold that's been found in the building. So have kind of, Brian's gonna be working on some solutions to that. How do we get in code? And so I just wanna emphasize the needs that we have to figure out what to do with our facilities, because we have, we don't want potential exposure to mold for our employees. We need to keep them safe, but we have buildings that have some serious problems. So I just wanted to underline that. I don't know, Brian, if you looked like you wanted to add something on that.
You'll be seeing it, it'll be a budget item. The quote as of now is $20,000 for remediation. We have quarantined off the area. No staff are allowed in there until we can figure out a plan moving forward. We are in fire code though.
Okay,
We are
good.
within fire code now. The ceiling tiles that's been taken care of. But yeah, we're just keeping our employees safe and doing everything we can, so.
Thanks. And that brings me to another improvement that we're talking about over on Bonnie Road, is moving the yard waste, because we used to have a brush area at Bakken Park, and now because of the improvements there, we don't have that area anymore. And we can take brush to Purple Cow as well. So kind of revamping how that will be utilized for our residents and what they can take there. And because Purple Cow can take so many different things, it'll be easier for us to do brush and yard waste and things. And then people don't have to wait until brush pickup, although we will still offer that service, but maybe it'll be a little lighter load on staff, and people can get stuff out of their yard, not on the brush waste schedule. So more to come on that. Then, as you know, the light fixture at BB&N, there was an accident a while ago, so Brian's working on replacing the company that did it before is not available anymore, so he's working on replacing that. And is this a discuss and consider on ours for the Purple Cow contract, which has been working out well for us. And we hope the committee recommended continuing on and moving forward with that contract.
And Heidi, that contract does include what you just referenced, is the brush items too?
Yep, brush and yard waste.
Correct. You know, that site it'll be actually in the same location. It'll just actually be a concrete slab poured between the old Bonnie building and the salt shed, so it'll be 80 by 60, pushed back a little bit to allow us more room. Every fall, we seem to kind of encroach in Toby and his area there, so we want to allow more room for our residents to drop off more materials. Being that we can, like you said, Heidi, take everything to one location, it just makes sense to try and offer that. If people don't want it sitting on their lawn, bring it there, as long as, we'll have guidelines 6 inches or smaller, but if they want to bring it there, that's less work that our staff are out on the streets, doing that type of stuff. So there's a lot of benefits to it. And we're giving back what we seemingly kind of took away, as far as the drop-off site at Bakken, but it's a better location all around.
Brian, how much is the Purple Cow contract?
Roughly, it's just over $5,000 a year.
Okay.
And then they get our stuff.
Yeah, I was just trying to, in the memo, it said
Got it right.
30K, but was that
So-
with the old?
No, so the background was the $30,000 was, so the old drop-off site that we had at Bakken Park,
Yeah.
every 3 years roughly would cost us $30,000 to tub grind and haul that away. Unfortunately, with that site, with it being unsecured, we would see several individuals out there that maybe weren't from the village, dropping off material there that we would have to take care of. So this allows us to hopefully move forward in a little more secure direction.
And the contract we're talking about tonight, it's a 3-year contract, right?
Correct.
So it's, I think, 2023, 52, 53, 2024, 5,400.
Yep.
2025, 5573.
And you'll see escalators on there. It hopefully allows us to avoid some fuel charges that could escalate it even higher, so.
I'll make a motion to approve the Purple Cow contract as written.
I'll second.
We have a first by David, second by Chris. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Anything else on Public Works?
I think I covered everything, unless Chris, Brian have something to add, or there's questions. Okay. Thanks.
So, just a quick question on the panels or the array. We're missing parts or whatever, inverter or something, right? And so, when we get that, then we'll have to wait for our application and everything to go through Alliant, correct? To get hooked up.
I'll let JJ answer. He's been
I
more
believe all
involved.
that's all coordinated,
So it's,
I think it's literally just plug whatever that part is in and
okay,
then
so
schedule it.
they're ready for us, all
I'll
right?
confirm it's been a while since I've talked to him, so I'll confirm that, but
I
think
just know from a personal perspective, it took a long
I
time.
believe that Lion application came in with everything else at the beginning and should be all lined up.
Okay. Yeah, well, that'd be great to be able to plug it in and go.
I was, if I may, John, I just want to let you know that light fixture at BB&N, it's not going to be an exact match.
Oh, come on.
I know. Well, I'd spent a considerable amount of time searching, but it's close. But the order's been placed, so
All right.
it will be coming.
I just more so for the light perspective. I don't necessarily
hear ya.
care what
No,
it looks like. Safety. Glad that's finally getting sorted. And I know you've been running around and listening to me hound you too. So I appreciate that. And then we'll move to Flynn Hall Committee. The Flynn Hall Committee meets at least once a year. This is a committee with the village, the town of Cottage Grove, the Lions Club, as well as the Historical Society, all of which are, main users of the Flynn Hall. Our residents certainly have that option. very quick meeting. We went through the budget and the things where we're at year to date, approved the budget for next year at the same rate and budget as this year. So all is good as there. Talked a little bit about improvements, but there's nothing really that the clubs and everything have taken advantage of making some improvements, like putting in new decking and stuff on the back, and some of the asphalt was done by the town, and I think the Lions did the concrete work. So a lot of things have been done to that very experienced building, and I think it's in good shape at this point. So it was a quick meeting. Any questions on that? And they do have Wi-Fi, so that came this year too. So that was something residents asked for. Then we'll move to Pier Court. David.
Yeah, let me pull up my minutes here. We met on July 18th at 5:02. We approved the minutes, got some updates from Briar Patch. There was 3 referrals since the last meeting. 1 had already closed, 2 were progressing. They were both scheduled for Justice Circles. For the year, as of July 18th, there were 9 total referrals. Briar Patch continues to develop, strengthen, and nurture the youth that come through with an individualized plans and helping them understand the consequences of their actions. Briar Patch did have a conference recently. It went really well. It was Dane County Conference was held recently around youth restorative justice. More workshops are coming as well, and Briar Patch just recently moved to Fitchburg. We then moved to discuss the 2023 goals. I do want to point out it was towards the end of July, and we're still trying to talk about the 2023 goals. Briar Patch has a new CEO, so we're going to circle back on the idea of 2023 goals. I actually don't think we'll actually talk about it this year. Claudia then asked if there was anything the committee would like to see from Briar Patch, and Jill had asked if there could be a newsletter published. We also talked about potential website updates. JJ, I think I sent you an email and introduced Claudia. It's probably on your to-do list. I just want to connect JJ and Claudia from Briar Patch. So that will be, I'll go to the next meeting, which will be in September. And JJ, maybe I'll need you to come, or at the very least, we'll connect Claudia and you two to talk about potential website updates and just kind of update the public about what is Pier Court, and why do we have it, what does it do, why is it important, that kind of thing. So next meeting is September 19th at 5 p.m. and we close the meeting 5:17, so it was all of 15 minutes. It was a long meeting this time. All good.
All right. Thanks, David.
Yep.
Next, then, we move to Deer Grove EMS Commission. We met on July 20th. Next time, we're going to go to Deerfield again in their new village hall. This time, we met in Cottage Grove. So we're back to alternating, which is nice in both communities. Normal things went through, the financials, et cetera, all look just fine. Chief is continuing to work to make sure the ambulances are up and running. There's still a couple of them are getting a little old, and the miles are getting up there, so we get some things that are popping up. But Chief's trying to balance all that out with budgets and everything, so that's really good to do. And obviously, that's what we talked about, placing our order for a new ambulance. I think it was the last time, if I remember correctly. The commission, our other commission members are looking forward to our due diligence wrap up here with what we've got going on for EMS going forward. That hinges then it's on maybe some additional staff and things like that, which Chief would like to do it because there's an opportunity for some funds, unassigned funds right now that we could perhaps do that. As Chief is related, the skill set of paramedic individuals, it is a limited set of folks that can do this throughout the state, and so we're competing against all other communities that are looking for these talented folks. So we'd like to continue to bring on full time. Also have a challenge with volunteers too, because it's a lot of work to do as a volunteer. So that was, those items were tabled until next time, until we can get an answer from this board, which we're not talking about tonight. And I think that's pretty much it. Chief, did I miss anything since you're here? Chief is shaking his head for everybody on the video. No. Brittany? No. Okay. Any questions from board members? All right. Then we'll move on to Nadvig landfill.
Sure.
David?
Another scorcher here. Met July 24th at 6:04. We approved the minutes. I made a motion to approve the bills as written, so we paid the bills. Results came in. We all reviewed the results. Nothing out of the ordinary. We then set our next meeting date was Monday, September 25th, 2023 at 6 p.m. And then we closed the meeting at 6:07, so whopping 3 minutes.
It's good when those meetings are short because then there's nothing going on with the landfill.
Yep.
Then we'll slide to the Fire District Commission.
I'll take that one since Vince was not able to attend, and I also had to take the minutes. Thanks, Vince.
Anytime, my friend.
We met 6:30 p.m. On July 24th. We approved the minutes. We did make one small change to the minutes of June 26th, but the motion carried 5-0. We then we watched the May 22nd meeting via YouTube to determine whether changes were necessary for the minutes. The commission could not come to consensus on whether or not there was consensus on May 22nd. We had no public appearances. Chief's report, 47 staff, currently 179 calls plus 2 exposures at the time of the report, averaging about 0.895 calls per day. The new tender that's coming in had final inspection, but they were actually the wrong tires were installed by Kenworth and given to Pierce. So delivery has been pushed back. Department participated in marketplace days and it was a success. False alarms continue to be an issue in the village with the Craig Frank apartment buildings. I believe the fire department's reaching out to the PD about that, or may not. Yeah, sounds like we are. It continues to be an issue. People messing with, I believe, smoke detectors or smoking in the stairwell, or just by and large, it's just causing a lot of false alarms. So it's becoming an issue quite a bit. Moving then, Chief Lang came and presented options around keyless entry options for the emergency services building. Deerfield is leaning towards the go keyless option for their fire station. That's the one where you take the Android tablet to change the code on individual doors at a time. Deerfield likes that option. Much of the commission's discussion is centered on long-term solutions versus short-term solutions. The go keyless option is much cheaper than there's a security company called ESS that Eric reached out to and got a quote. However, the ESS option can allow for cameras in the future. Ultimately, we tabled the conversation just so that we could get more information and get more detail from ESS and potentially look at other options. And it was a pretty lively discussion there. Chief, anything to add about that? No? Okay, cool. We then had to purchase new fans for the bay at a price of $2,663. That passed. And then Chief Archibald presented pricing on ladder replacements. Just for awareness, prices have gone from $1.7 million to $2 million in 1 year. There are currently 3-year lead times for purchasing new ladder replacements. We will need to order the new replacement by 2025 based on current lead times. We did ask Chief to continue to just give us updates on pricing. It's not hard for the vendor to update their pricing, but the prices do continue to go up at a substantial clip. So just something to be aware of. From there, we set our next meeting date, which is September 7th at 6:30, and then we close the meeting. Any questions? Awesome.
And it just, what does that mean that we couldn't come to consensus on, I mean, so the minutes or?
So the minutes, let me pull up my notes here, just so I'm clear. So the minutes from May 22nd state that the commission, there was a consensus from the commission that both the village and the town should pay for the new tender.
Yeah.
We took issue with that. The village as a whole, at our, I believe, at a recent meeting, we said that's not we don't agree on that. So we had that added to the fire commission meeting as per, I believe, Larry's recommendation. We then watched the video and luckily Vince wasn't there, but Chris was there. So Chris, I'll take your opinion on it. But we watched that video, I believe, twice.
At least, yeah.
And we could not come to consensus on
Chris
how we all
was
viewed
talking
the
to
video.
David. It wasn't on the agenda. We weren't discussing it.
Yeah.
Chris just said to David, will we do the same thing for the tender? And David said, I'll talk to staff about it. Which to me doesn't sound like consensus. But apparently they disagreed. They didn't think that was a smoking gun. So we couldn't agree to.
But we now have it in the minutes that we could not reach consensus about consensus.
Needs to go to the review booth, throw the red flag.
We watched the YouTube, literally, they even recorded us watching the YouTube video. We watched it twice.
Chris's reasoning
Did you watch
is
it in
that
slow motion?
I wish we could have.
Chris's reasoning was that when he and David were talking, nobody dissented, which is kind of silly because it wasn't something that you could agree or disagree with because it wasn't a discussion item.
Right.
But
Okay, so we're not held to.
no, I mean ultimately it doesn't matter. We just wanted to get it in the record
Just
that
wanted it on record.
we are not
Thank you,
going
yes.
to be doing that.
Thanks.
Agree to disagree. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
All right, next then we have the Law Enforcement Committee. The Law Enforcement Committee met on July 25th. Covered the normal things that we cover there, calls, et cetera. We did talk about possible grant the chief brought up, the Enbridge Safe Community First Responder Program. This is also, I think, EMS and fire have also applied for this in the past as well, and probably will be with this one. So there is no commitment by the village. There's some grants, you have a portion that you have to pay versus if you get it versus what you get. This is just because the pipeline's running close to the village and they open up this program to us. So if we get it, that'll be very nice. We'll use it for community outreach, I think is what Chief said. He's nodding, thank you. Because I can hardly read my writing because I was writing so feverishly. So we then talked a little bit about on a couple places here. We've got spots where little kiddos are walking across and as well as adults, particularly on Main Street and this one, Main Street and Wheelbridge Taylor intersection there's a spot. Found out that the cost of putting in the beacons like we have in a couple other spots on Main Street is around $125,000. This is just a discussion at this point. Certainly would have to be in a capital budget item for that. So more to come. That will be through the budget discussion. But it was nice to at least have that conversation. It is a heavily trafficked area, so and it's hard for to use like solar because of the tree canopy and stuff. So you have to run wire there. Talked about putting in potentially a couple flashing signs and Cottage Grove and Southern Grange. Again, this is for future because the cost is $4,000 per sign. This was a result of some community members raising this, that some people come up to that intersection, particularly on BB or Cottage Grove Road, and don't even know that it's a four-way stop for whatever reason, which is not good because that's when people get hurt. So more to come on that as well. First half of the budget looks okay, except for we have a few expenses that are out of whack, but Chief's working on those. Talked about the monthly reports. We had two officers, candidates make it through all the way through. One withdrawed right near the end. One is going to the academy, so We're at, yeah, with that particular individual, we're at 17 officers, I think. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. More to come on field training with the SRO because the schools are off for the summer. That officer's been doing some work there and helping out detectives. Talked about that. Canine's been busy as always, not only in the community here but elsewhere when needed. Calls are about what they've been. Officers getting out and making sure we're safe. And then Chief put a plug in for Community Night Out on the 17th. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, I just want to mention something, and
No,
Chief,
you can't. I'm sorry.
Chief has been very proactive on this. We've probably experienced unusually high maintenance on our squad cars this year. While we have wages coming in low, which is not what you want, it's because of staff vacancies. That's going to cover up some of the discrepancies. Chief and I are now working on what we believe that budget line item will come to the board just for transparency, so we can kind of estimate what we feel like that will come across. So more to come.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Anything else with law enforcement? Then reports from village officers, starting off with Larry.
We talked a little bit about open meetings earlier. Well, let's do this. I'm going to give you all an assignment. Let me know what you'd like to hear about, and when we have shorter meetings sometime, I can have some things in the hopper that I can share, give updates on. But I'd be interested to know what you'd like to hear about in terms of your role and what we can do to help clarify all these processes.
Thanks, Larry. That's your homework, everybody. IT update, Cameron?
Yeah, I just thought it was time to give an overall update on several projects that we have going on. The cabling project has been completed. It came back about $8,000 under budget, which we were happy about. We are getting close to the server replacement being finalized. They're just finishing up getting the systems converted over. The computer replacement program is complete. So successful so far. And then kind of this leads into unofficially, actually we'll save it for future agenda items because it's not appropriate to talk about here.
A little teaser for us, thanks. All right. Communication and miscellaneous business, starting off with consideration of the vouchers. Any questions, comments on the vouchers as presented?
Make a motion to pay the bills as written.
All right, thank you, David. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brittany. Any questions, comments regarding the vouchers? Otherwise, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Correspondence, I don't have any. I don't know if anybody else.
One, everyone also received it, but just it's worth noting, correspondence from Sean. The article, the coverage that we received from UW's communications department on the Miracle League field. It's a rather long article, but it's worth the read and checking out and passing along to your friends and family because it's a pretty cool article. So, okay.
Yeah, that, actually, I read it before I went to bed. It was kind of a nice way to close out the evening. So when I saw it, but compared to what else you can read on the news. Anything else, correspondence? Then we move right to upcoming community events. We do have what we talked about earlier. Everybody getting out on the 17th. Other things, anyone want to highlight?
Stop the Bus is Saturday at Piggly Wiggly for school supplies.
Yep. And you can bring school supplies or money. Both will be accepted. Schools like both. And there should be a crew there. There'll be a bus there too as well as the Metro Market in Monona too. So each year. So other communities do that. I think McFarland did it last week, I believe, with the Lions there. So and they had nice outreach from the community there as well, and it goes to a wonderful cause. So thank you for that, Brittany. Any others? All right. Then future agenda items.
I was hoping to take a quick straw poll of village board trustees' availability for a joint meeting with the library board and FGM's final presentation of their work on the library master plan. The proposed date is September 20th. And this is a tricky one to coordinate, so I'm really hoping you all have nothing going on that night.
September 20th?
Yep.
Works for me.
Seeing 3 yeses.
Should be fine.
We can be flexible on time.
No, I said should be fine. Is what
Oh,
I
should be
said.
fine.
But I'm glad you're flexible on time.
I asked what time.
No.
My thought was, I guess, anywhere from 5 to 6:30, starting time, most likely 6 or 6:30.
Yeah, we just need a quorum from both boards. That's what you're trying
Which
to
I've
get
got,
at.
I've got 4 nodding heads, so, all right, well, that's
Oh, geez. There's always one guy.
I think that's enough thumbs up, and, okay, thank you all.
Okay. Straw poll taken.
Yep.
All right, if there's nothing else, then I'll make a motion to, the village board goes into closed session regarding negotiation position relative to the Deer Grove EMS intergovernmental agreement.
One more item, one more
Sure.
future agenda item. So I'm sharing my screen. So
yes.
the infamous capital prioritization plan. So this lengthy process over the last 2.5 months. So what this entailed is gathering what we consider major capital projects, road maintenance items with Public Works, as well as equipment needs from our internal departments, as well as EMS and fire. So what I shared with all of you guys, and I hope you received it, was an email with the link of the capital prioritization grading. If I was a betting person, this should take anywhere between maybe an hour and a half to complete. And certainly if you get into it, you read it, you need more time and want to get back into it, let me know if for some reason it's causing you any issues. I did set up the survey to only allow a completion of 1 time. And so a couple things to point out here. As discussed, we are grading things through A through F. So that's numbered as number 1 is Group A, 2, B, C, D, E, all the way to F. A critical piece of the prioritization process, though, is the guidelines that were sent out with the survey. And certainly, if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns about it, the big date to keep in mind, and it is a little bit of condensed, but with where the budget process and what Ellers needs to get this all into a passable FMP is back to me by the 16th. I would encourage completion earlier than that, just in case we have to have some communication ahead of time to get, if I need some clarification from board members, what I'll do is I'll take your responses and I'll compare it to the guidelines, and likely we'll have at least a 5-minute discussion, just so I have some notes internally on what the intent was for the answers. There's approximately 22 items on here, and again, if you want to have questions about what this project is outside of the brief description, I encourage you to reach out to departments. And then the department record, or the year that we have on here, as if there was nothing else going on, this is what the year that the department would recommend. So ultimately, when we get all of these responses back, we'll take a look at the criteria that was established and put those projects into years. I'll take everything that is gathered on the 16th, put it into a packet. It will include equipment and road maintenance project as part of the plan. Ultimately, I'm asking the board to approve the prioritization on the 21st, which then I will turn over to Ellers to include in the FMP. Next, future agenda items, vendor reviews are on their way. For August 21st, we have Associated Appraisal, Colonial Club, and General Engineering, who handles our inspections. Certainly, I would recommend, if you have any questions, sending ahead of time. It just gives them a little bit of a notice to prepare a more comprehensive answer, or to formulate a slide, maybe to address those questions, comments, or concerns. But ultimately, if you'd like to ask a question when they meet, more than welcome to. That's all I have.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, any other future agenda items? Then we'll move to, I'll make a motion then to go, that the village board will go into closed session regarding negotiation position relative to Deer Grove EMS intergovernment, governmental agreement. The Village of Cottage Grove Board will enter a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, deliberating and negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or the conducting of other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, David. Roll call, please.